When I lifted the phone to ask my son Max about the wedding date, Lena, my daughter-in-law, looked straight at me and smiling in a way that chilled my bones said, "Oh, we already got married yesterday. We only invited special people." The words landed like ice. Special people. Me, the woman who for 3 years had paid their $500 rent each month, bought every piece of furniture in their home, and stocked their fridge when they had nothing to eat. Apparently I was not special. I stood in my own living room, the phone heavy in my hand, watching my son avoid my eyes while Lena settled on the sofa I'd bought them. The pale pink dress I'd chosen for her wedding hung useless in my closet, alongside the new shoes and the hope that I'd be part of my only son's biggest day. I'd spent $200 on that dress, picturing myself in Max's wedding photos I would now never be in. For weeks I'd planned every little thing. I'd set aside money to give them $1,000 as a wedding gift. I'd called my sister Diana in Chicago to share the joy. I'd scrubbed my house from top to bottom, expecting they might come celebrate with me afterward. All of it crumbled in an instant because of those 4 poisoned words. Only special people. Max finally looked up and offered a practiced reply. "Mom, it was an intimate thing, very small, just the 2 of us and the witnesses." But I knew he was lying. I'd seen the photos on social media. Lena's parents beaming beside the bride and groom, her siblings toasting with champagne, Lena in that white dress I'd helped pay for with the $800 I'd given her the month before for her personal expenses. I saw everything I wasn't supposed to see. Exactly 7 days after that humiliation, Lena rang me again. But her voice was different. The confident woman who'd shut me out was gone. Now she sounded desperate, pleading. "Renata, the rent is overdue. The landlord's on our back. If we don't pay this week, he'll evict us. You forgot to make the transfer." Her voice trembled as if the sky were falling. I was silent for a moment, recalling every frantic trip I'd made to the bank, every plan I'd canceled to keep a roof over their heads, every meal I'd sacrificed so I could send money for their wants. After they'd excluded me from the most important moment of their lives, they had the gall to call me like nothing had happened. "Lena," I said, my voice calmer than I expected. "Didn't I warn you I only help special people?" The silence on the line stretched so long I could hear my own heartbeat. For once it wasn't me shaking, it was her. "Renata, I don't understand," she stammered. "We were always special to you. You're like a second mom to me." Lies. All lies, wrapped in that syrupy tone she used only when she needed cash. The same tone she'd used to ask for money for the dress, the honeymoon, the rings I'd helped finance, never knowing I wouldn't witness them being exchanged. For years I'd tiptoed around them, measuring each word, each gift, hoping for a scrap of affection from my son. I was the dutiful mother, the obliging mother-in-law, the silent provider who never complained when they treated me like air. But the phrase "only special people" awoke something that had been asleep inside me for far too long. I began to total up everything I'd given in those 3 years. Rent, food, gifts, emergencies, whims. The figure climbed. Over $20,000. $20,000 taken from my retirement, from savings, from the money my late husband left so I could live the last years of my life in peace. And for what? To be treated like a stranger on my son's wedding day. After I hung up that night, I sat on the edge of my bed and cried. Not with sorrow, but with a fury I'd been bottling for years. I wept for every time they made me feel my love was a burden, my presence an annoyance, my money the only thing I had to offer. I mourned the foolish mother I'd been, the woman who'd lost herself trying to be indispensable to people who considered her expendable. When I woke the next morning, something inside had shifted. It wasn't just the sting of betrayal, it was a colder resolve. I stared into the bathroom mirror. Same tired eyes, same lines from decades of giving. But there was a new hardness in my gaze, a determination I barely recognized. I made coffee like I always had, but I didn't think to call Max to ask how he'd slept. I didn't check my phone for an apologetic text. For the first time in years, I put myself first. I sat at the table where I'd planned surprises, counted bills for them, and cried silently over their indifference. Today that table would witness something else. I pulled out my checkbook and bank statements and began to add. Rent at $500 for 36 months. $18,000. Food and supplies at roughly $200 a month. $7,200. Presents, birthdays, Christmases, anniversaries, at least $3,000. Lena's medical emergencies, $800. The car loan they never repaid, $2,500. Air conditioner repairs, $600. Living room furniture, $1,200. $33,400. That was the exact total of my generosity. $33,400 drained from my husband's inheritance, from my pension, from savings I'd built penny by penny over decades of honest work. All poured into keeping two adults comfortable who couldn't even pretend to respect me. The phone buzzed. Max calling. Once my heart would have leapt and I'd answer, pleading for reconciliation. This time I let it ring once, twice, 3 times, then cut it off. 10 minutes later Lena called. I ignored it too. A text came from Max. Mom, please answer. We need to talk. I deleted it. At 2 in the afternoon I decided on a walk, not to run an errand for them but simply because I wanted to. I passed the park where I'd taken Max as a child and remembered that small boy who once hugged me and said I was the best mom. When had he become a man who treated me like an ATM? When had I mistaken money for love? At the bank, I paused in front of the branch where I'd set up automatic transfers. Mr. Klein, the branch manager who'd processed every payment, waved from behind the glass. I'd known him for years. He'd watched my account thin month after month. I went straight to his office. Mr. Klein, I need to cancel the automatic transfers I set up, I told him. He looked startled. For 3 years those transfers had been as regular as the sunrise. Are you sure, Mrs. Richter? Did something happen? His concern felt more genuine than anything Max had shown lately. I finally opened my eyes, I said. Cancel them all and tell me how to protect my accounts. I don't want anyone else touching my money. While he worked the cancellations, my phone kept buzzing, Max, Lena, Max again. It was as if they had a radar for when their cash source was threatened. I switched the phone off. As Mr. Klein handed me the final papers, he said quietly, I hope you're not being pressured into this. I've seen how generous you've been. Those words moved me deeply. A stranger at a bank cared more for my welfare than my own son had. I'm not being pressured, I answered. I'm finally done pressuring myself. Walking out of the bank felt like shedding a great weight. My money was mine once more. No more obligations to people who treated me like a resource. At home I thought of the trips I'd skipped, the friends I'd lost touch with, the hobbies I'd abandoned so every dollar could go to them. Then I saw 3 cars at my curb, Max's, Lena's, and a third I didn't recognize. I watched movement through my windows and felt the old fear spike. They still had keys. I'd trusted them, given them keys, believing they'd care for me as I'd cared for them. I breathed deep before opening the door, bracing for a confrontation. Inside, I found a scene seared into my memory. Max curled on my sofa with his head in his hands, Lena pacing like a trapped animal, an unfamiliar older man rifling through papers on my dining table, my papers, my private documents. What is going on? I asked louder than I intended. They all stared at me as if I were the intruder. Lena rushed forward, that same urgent tone I'd heard on the phone. Renata, thank God you're here. We need to talk. Mr. Fisher is from the law firm we consulted about your situation. My situation? I repeated, surprised by my own calm. What situation? I'm fine. Max finally raised his head, eyes now full of the panic of someone cornered. Mom, we went to the bank. They told us you canceled the transfers and blocked our access to your accounts. We don't understand why. A man in his 50s, gray suit and a slick, untrustworthy smile, approached with an outstretched hand. Mrs. Richter, I'm Dr. Fisher, a family law attorney. Your children are concerned about your mental health and have asked me to evaluate the situation. I didn't take his hand. I walked to my dining table and gathered the papers he'd been browsing without permission. These are my private documents. You have no right to look through them. Mom, Max said, his tone dripping condescension. We're worried about you. Your behavior has been strange. First you cut us off financially without explanation. Then you don't answer our calls. We think you might need professional help. Lena reached for my hand with that fake tenderness she always used when she wanted something. Renata, honey, maybe loneliness is getting to you. At your age, confusion can happen. The word confusion rang like an alarm. Then I understood why they brought the lawyer. This wasn't about help. It was an attempt to have me declared incompetent and seize my finances. The same woman who'd told me I wasn't special now painted me as a senile old lady. I am not confused, I said, my voice firm enough to silence the room. I'm clearer than I've been in years, and you will leave my home right now. Dr. Fisher assumed his measured lawyer voice. Mrs. Richter, I understand you feel overwhelmed, but your children can intervene if they believe your financial decisions are impaired. They have documented concerning behaviors. Concerning behaviors? I laughed, a dry, almost cruel sound. Like what? Choosing to keep what's mine? Refusing to bankroll two adults who treat me with contempt? Lena leapt up as if I'd struck her. We never treated you badly. Your family. Everything you have will be ours one day. We're just speeding up the process. There it was, naked truth. In their minds I was already dead. They'd been collecting their inheritance early. It didn't matter if I lived years longer. To them I'd become an inconvenient ATM. Out, I said, pointing to the door. All three of you, out of my house. Max rose with that petulant face he wore when denied. Mom, we can't just leave. We have obligations, rent, car payments, the credit card you co-signed. You can't cut us off overnight. Who says I can't? I snapped, my voice rising for the first time that afternoon. For years I'd paid rent in someone else's name, stocked a fridge in a home that didn't welcome me, financed a life that had no place for me. Dr. Fisher produced a folder and laid it on my table. Mrs. Richter, we've prepared documents to facilitate this transition. A power of attorney so Max and Lena can manage your finances temporarily until you're stable. I grabbed the folder and without opening it, hurled it into the trash. The only transition happening here would be theirs, to the front door. Lena began to cry, but those weren't sorrowful tears. They were the rage of entitlement. You can't do this to us, Renata. We had plans based on your support. We bought things, took on debts because we trusted you. Obligations built on my money, I said. Not on my well-being, my happiness, or my presence, just my cash. And now that I'd chosen to use my money for myself, I was suddenly a confused old woman needing guardianship. Max edged forward, but I stepped back. He was no longer my frightened child. He was a 35-year-old man who saw his mother as an obstacle between him and a life financed by someone else. Mom, we made mistakes. He offered in a tone meant to sound contrite. The wedding was a misunderstanding. Lena was nervous. I was under pressure. We can fix this if you just act reasonable. Reasonable. The word tasted bitter. To be reasonable meant to continue footing their bills while they acted as if I did not exist. Dr. Fisher packed his papers with the efficient cool of someone used to closed doors. Mrs. Richter, this is not over. Your family has legal options. If your decisions are irrational due to mental health, a judge could assign a guardian. His words landed like a blow. They weren't just manipulating me. They were threatening to strip me of control of my life. I looked him straight in the eye. I suggest you research before threatening a 71-year-old woman who has managed her finances for 40 years, raised her son alone after her husband's death, worked honestly until retirement, and until last week supported two fully capable adults. Lena stopped crying, and the coldness that flashed across her face finally revealed who she really was. This isn't over, Renata, she hissed. We have rights. And we have lawyers. Wonderful, I replied calmly. Hire as many as you want. Just make sure you pay for them yourselves. My money won't be funding your tantrums anymore. The three of them turned toward the door, walking away with the bruised pride of people who'd never been told no before. Just before stepping out, Max turned back, his voice sharp with bitterness. Mom, this is going to end badly for you. You'll end up all alone, with no one to care for you when you need it most. I met his gaze and said softly, Max, I'm already alone. The only difference is that this time, it's my choice, not your neglect. When the door closed behind them, I stood still for a moment, surrounded by the quietest sound I'd ever heard, the sound of freedom. For the first time in years, silence didn't feel empty. It felt peaceful. That night, sleep didn't come easily, but not because I was sad. It was adrenaline, not sorrow, that kept me awake. I felt alive, like a general plotting her next move after taking back her lost ground. If Max and Lena wanted a war, they'd have one. But it would be fought with strategy, not emotion. By 6 in the morning I was dressed and ready. My first stop was the law office of Mr. Weber, an attorney I'd met years ago while managing my late husband's will. Unlike that sly Mr. Pfizer, whom Max and Lena had brought, Mr. Weber was a man of integrity and well known for protecting the rights of the elderly. After listening to my story, he sighed. "Mrs. Richter, what your children attempted yesterday happens more often than people realize. It's called elder financial abuse, and it's a serious federal offense. Entering your home without permission and going through your private papers? That's another violation." His words both reassured and unsettled me. They comforted me because they proved I wasn't imagining things, but frightened me because they revealed how grave the situation really was. "We'll need to document everything," Mr. Weber said firmly. "Every payment, every gift, every time they pressured you for money. And we'll update your will to safeguard your assets from future manipulation." We spent 3 hours sorting through my finances. When he saw the total, he whistled softly. $33,400 in just 3 years. "Mrs. Richter, that's more than enough to travel, to live comfortably, to enjoy your retirement. Instead, you financed 2 adults who didn't even think you were worthy of a wedding invitation." When I left his office, I had a plan, clear and strong. Step 1, change all the locks. Step 2, install a complete security system. Step 3, open a new bank account they knew nothing about. Step 4, start living the life I had put on hold for far too long. My next stop was the hardware store. The owner, Mr. Summer, had known me for years. I used to come in often, to buy tools or supplies for Max and Lena's apartment. But this time was different. "Mrs. Richter," he greeted kindly. "Another emergency with your son?" "Not this time," I smiled. "Today, I'm finally doing something for myself. I need new locks, good ones." He raised an eyebrow but didn't ask questions. As I browsed the shelves, his son Ethan, who worked installing security systems, walked in. Providence had perfect timing. "Ethan," I said, "I want a full surveillance system installed, cameras, alarms, everything. Cost doesn't matter." While they prepared for the installation, my phone rang. The caller ID showed an unfamiliar number, but I knew that voice the moment I answered. It was Lena. "Renata, please don't hang up," she begged. "We just need to talk like adults." "Go ahead," I said flatly. "I know you're angry about the wedding. It was wrong, I admit it. Max and I want to make things right. How about we have a small dinner to celebrate? With you this time. At your place, just like before. We can cook together." The manipulation in her tone was so transparent I nearly laughed. "Lena, how much rent do you owe?" I asked bluntly. Her pause told me everything. 2 months, she mumbled. $1,000 total. "But that's not why I called. We really miss you." "Do you miss me?" I asked. "Or my money?" "Both," she said honestly. "I won't lie. We need help, but we love you too. You're important to us." "If that's true," I said, my voice calm, "why wasn't I important enough to be at your wedding? Why do you only call when you need cash? When was the last time you called just to ask how I was?" She didn't answer. We both knew the truth, never. "Lena," I continued, "for 3 years, you've treated me like an ATM that happens to have feelings. You've used me, ignored me, and finally humiliated me. Now that the money's gone, you've suddenly found love for me again? No. You made your choice when you excluded me from your wedding. Now I'm making mine." I hung up before she could reply. I turned my phone off completely. No more interruptions on my first true day of freedom. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in over a year. I went to the beauty salon. I'd always canceled appointments because Max or Lena had another emergency. But not today. "Mrs. Richter," my stylist Cynthia exclaimed when she saw me. "It's been so long. We thought you'd forgotten us." "I didn't forget," I smiled. "I just forgot that I deserve care too. I treated myself to everything: cut, color, manicure, pedicure. For the first time in years, I spent money on myself without an ounce of guilt." As Cynthia worked, she chatted about her children, her dreams, her life. It felt good to listen without thinking of Max and Lena. When she finished, she looked at me through the mirror. "You look amazing, Mrs. Richter. But more than that, you look free." I am, I said softly. I finally learned how to say no. When I returned home, I noticed a car parked by my house, one I didn't recognize. For a brief second, fear tightened my chest. Had they come back? But as I approached, I saw an older woman sitting on my porch steps. Mrs. Richter? She asked gently. Yes, that's me. I'm Eleanor Brooks, your neighbor. We've lived beside each other for years, but we've never really spoken. I heard loud voices yesterday and wanted to check if you were all right. Her kindness hit me deeper than I expected. A stranger cared more for my well-being than my own son. Come in, Mrs. Brooks, I said warmly. Let me make us some coffee. You'll want to hear this story. As the coffee brewed, I told her everything. Eleanor listened quietly, nodding now and then, and when I finished, tears glistened in her eyes. Mrs. Richter, she said softly, you did the right thing. I went through the same thing with my daughter 5 years ago. I thought giving her money proved my love. Turns out, it only made me her bank account. What did you do? I asked. I stopped. It was awful at first. They begged, threatened, and guilt-tripped me. But after 6 months, my daughter called to apologize. Now we actually love each other again, because money isn't part of it anymore. Her story gave me hope. Do you think Max and Lena will understand one day? I asked quietly. Maybe they will, she said. Maybe not. But that's not your burden anymore. Your only duty now is to live your own life. That night, for the first time in years, I slept peacefully thinking about myself, my future, and no one else's problems. The next morning, Ethan and Mr. Summer arrived to install the locks and cameras. My phone buzzed nonstop with unknown numbers, but I ignored them all. I was finally learning to choose silence over chaos. When Ethan finished, he smiled. Mrs. Richter, you'll love this setup. You can see who's at your door anytime. And if anyone tries to break in, the police are notified instantly. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was installing protection against my own child. But the pain had dulled. It wasn't sadness anymore, it was wisdom. While they worked, I decided to reconnect with someone I'd neglected, my sister Diana in Chicago. It had been months since we'd spoken. Renata, she answered surprised. Is that really you? Yes, Diana. I'm doing better than ever. I just needed to tell you. I've finally opened my eyes. I told her everything, the wedding, the lies, the lawyer, the cutoff. She listened silently, and when I finished, her words cut deep but true. Renata, it's about time. Every time we talked, I could hear the pain behind your pride. You gave and gave, but they never gave back. I wanted to tell you. Max never spoke of you with love, only as his financial backup. Her honesty stung, but it was healing pain, the kind that cleanses instead of wounds. And Lena, she added, always spoke about you in the future tense. When Renata's gone, we'll remodel her house. When we inherit, we'll invest. They weren't planning a life with you. They were planning one after you. Those words hit like ice. They hadn't just used me, they'd been waiting for me to disappear. After the call, I sat quietly in my kitchen, realizing just how blind love can make a person. 35 years of motherhood, 3 years of financial support, and all I'd been was a stepping stone to their comfort. Then my new doorbell chimed. On the security camera, I saw Eleanor holding 2 steaming mugs. When I opened the door, she smiled warmly. I thought you might like some company, she said. We sat together in my living room, sipping coffee and sharing stories. My daughter used to say the same things yours did. Eleanor laughed softly. You're like a second mom. We're special. Everything will be ours someday. It's manipulation, Mrs. Richter. There's no book about it, but every ungrateful child seems to read the same script. Did you ever feel guilty? I asked. Every day for the first few months, she said. But then I saw real change. My daughter got a job, her husband started helping out, and they finally learned to live within their means. They learned that I was a person, not a wallet. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in years. I visited my husband's grave. The cemetery was quiet, the air heavy with peace. His headstone looked neglected, and guilt pricked my heart. I knelt beside it, brushing away the leaves. Robert, I whispered, I think I lost myself for a while. I tried to give our son everything, thinking it would fill the space you left. But I was wrong. I forgot to take care of myself. A gentle wind rustled the trees, and for a moment I felt him near. Our son has become someone I hardly recognize, I continued. Maybe he was always like this and I just refused to see it. But I've learned now. The money you left for me to live in peace I wasted trying to buy love. But no more, my love. I'm finally free. I cleaned his grave, replaced the wilted flowers, and sat there quietly for a while. For the first time in years there was no rush, no call to make, no crisis to fix. Just peace. When I pulled up to my house, 3 cars were already lined up outside. My heart began to race, but this time I wasn't caught off guard, I was ready. I checked the security cameras and saw Max, Lena, and 2 unfamiliar faces standing in front of my home, all of them visibly agitated and pointing toward the house. I didn't step out of my car. Instead, I immediately called my lawyer, Mr. Weber. Mr. Weber, they're here again, Max, Lena, and others. What should I do? His voice was steady. Stay inside your car, Mrs. Richter. I'll be there immediately, and I'm calling the police right now. After our conversation yesterday, I filed for a temporary restraining order. They're not legally allowed on your property. Within minutes, 2 police cars and Mr. Weber arrived. From my seat, I watched as officers confronted Max and Lena. My son gestured wildly, shouting at them, while Lena began her usual routine, tears, trembling lips, and dramatics. But this time her crying meant nothing to me. One officer walked to my car window. Ma'am, you can step out now. Everything's under control. They'll be leaving right away. As I got out, Max yelled from across the street, his voice full of indignation. Mom, this is insane. We're your family. How could you call the police on your own son? I met his anger with calm. Family doesn't threaten to have you declared incompetent. Max's family doesn't break into your home without permission. Family doesn't use their mother like an ATM. Lena screamed back. You'll regret this, Renata. You owe us money. You co-signed our bills and you can't just walk away. Before I could reply, Mr. Weber stepped forward. Mrs. Brooks, he said firmly, any communication from you or your husband must go through my office from now on. And I strongly advise you to seek legal counsel before making baseless threats, because my client has full documentation of every voluntary payment she made over the past 3 years. The look on Lena's face faltered. Max muttered something under his breath. Then they all climbed into their cars and drove away, defeated, though clearly not done. But this time I wasn't afraid. I had a skilled lawyer, emotional support from Eleanor, and, most importantly, complete clarity about what was right and wrong. That evening, Eleanor invited me to her house for dinner. Her daughter was visiting, and for the first time in years, I witnessed what a healthy family looked like. They spoke to each other with kindness, listened sincerely, and laughed together. Not once did money enter the conversation. I always dreamed of that with Max, I admitted softly after her daughter left. Eleanor smiled knowingly. Maybe you'll have it someday, Renata. But first, your son needs to understand that you're a person deserving of respect, not a paycheck. That night, I went to bed feeling something I hadn't felt in months, hope. The following days were oddly peaceful. Still, the cameras showed me that Max and Lena drove by my house several times each day. Sometimes they'd park nearby for a few minutes, as if observing, waiting for the perfect time to strike again. Mr. Weber had already advised me to keep a record of every visit. Their persistence will only strengthen your case, he'd said. Every time they appear after being told not to, it supports our request for a permanent restraining order. So I kept notes, dates, times, and details. Then one Friday morning, while I was peacefully having breakfast, the doorbell rang. On my monitor, I saw a well-dressed young woman holding a folder and smiling politely. Something about her demeanor told me this was not a friendly visit. Good morning, Mrs. Renata Richter, she said as I opened the door. I'm Mrs. Schmidt, a social worker with the Office of Senior Services. We've received a report that you may be in a high-risk situation, and I need to conduct a wellness check. My stomach dropped. Max and Lena had taken their scheming to another level. They'd brought in the government. Can I see your identification? I asked cautiously. Of course. She handed me her official ID. It looked legitimate. I'd like to come inside and speak with you, she added pleasantly. I knew refusing would only make things worse, so I nodded and let her in. She took a seat in my living room, opened her folder and began reading in a rehearsed tone. Mrs. Richter, reports state that you've recently displayed concerning financial behavior, cut off communication with your family, and shown signs of paranoia by installing excessive security systems. It also mentions that you've refused medical and legal assistance from relatives. Every word was designed to paint me as unstable. I could practically hear Lena dictating the report. She had always been a master at twisting the truth. Mrs. Schmidt, I said firmly, I would like to contact my attorney before answering any questions. This isn't a legal interrogation, she replied smoothly. It's just a wellness check. If you have nothing to hide, there shouldn't be an issue. That phrase, if you have nothing to hide, ignited something inside me. It was the same manipulative logic abusers use when they violate someone's privacy. I'm calling my lawyer, I said. You're welcome to wait here or return later, but I won't speak without representation. Mr. Weber arrived 20 minutes later. The moment he saw her, his expression hardened. Mrs. Schmidt, he said, inspecting her badge. I hope you have a court order to be here, because my client is under legal protection. Any unsanctioned investigation is harassment. Mrs. Schmidt faltered slightly. Sir, we received a report from concerned family members. It's our duty to check on her safety. Concerned family? Mr. Weber scoffed. You mean the same family who tried to coerce her into signing a power of attorney? The ones who broke into her home and rummaged through her personal papers? The ones who lived off her money while excluding her from their lives? He opened a folder and placed it on the table. Here's proof of the abuse: financial transfers totaling $33,400, instances of emotional blackmail, and records of systematic manipulation. If anyone deserves investigation, it's them. Mrs. Schmidt's composure wavered as she skimmed through the evidence. Clearly, this wasn't the story she'd been told. Mrs. Richter, she asked gently, why did you suddenly stop financially supporting your son? Because I finally realized they weren't treating me like a mother, I answered. They saw me as a wallet. I decided to stop funding people who only value my money, not my presence. But don't you feel it's your duty to help your family? She pressed. My duty as a mother ended when my son became an adult, I replied firmly. I raised him, educated him, and gave him every opportunity to stand on his own. He's 35 years old, married, and perfectly capable of working. Supporting him financially is not my obligation. It's a choice I no longer make. Mr. Weber added coolly, would you consider it normal for a 35-year-old man to depend on his 71-year-old mother for rent, Mrs. Schmidt? The social worker paused, visibly reconsidering everything. Do you manage your finances independently, Mrs. Richter? She asked after a moment. Yes, I replied. My accounts, taxes, and investments are all current and in perfect order. I handle my own home, drive my own car, and have healthy relationships with my neighbors. Do you take any medications? She asked. Just vitamins, I said, smiling faintly. No medical conditions, no prescriptions. Mr. Weber handed her another document. My client recently underwent a full medical evaluation, physical and psychological. She's perfectly sound. After reviewing everything, Mrs. Schmidt sighed, closing her folder. Mrs. Richter, based on what I've seen and heard, I find no evidence that you're at risk or in need of intervention. I'll be closing this case. When she left, Mr. Weber and I sat quietly for a while. Finally, he spoke. Renata, this isn't over. They're escalating. Max and Lena are wasting money they don't even have, trying to prove you incompetent. So they're desperate? I asked. Exactly, he said. Their last card will be filing for guardianship through the courts. It's rare and difficult to win, but if they find a judge who sympathizes with them, they might try to have your finances seized. The thought chilled me. The idea that my own son could try to control my life was terrifying. Later that day, I called Diana to vent. Do you see how far they'll go for money? She said in disbelief. They're willing to destroy family ties, spend what little they have on lawyers, and ruin their reputations, just to get your bank account back. Her words hit hard. Max and Lena had finally shown who they really were. There was no going back now, no illusion of reconciliation. I wasn't a mother to them, just a means to an end. That realization, painful as it was, brought me peace. I no longer had to question whether I'd done the right thing. That evening, Eleanor stopped by with a surprise, her garden club friends. "Renata," she smiled, "I want you to meet some wonderful ladies. Cynthia from the salon, Maria, Carmen, and Alfreda. We've all faced the same struggles." We spent the evening sharing stories. Each of them had faced manipulation and entitlement from their own families. "I've realized," I admitted softly, "that what hurts most isn't losing the money. It's realizing the love I thought I had never existed." Alfreda, the eldest, nodded wisely. "True love can't be bought, dear. If you had to pay for it, it was never real." Her words soothed my heart. She was right, I had been buying attention, not love. "You know what I've learned?" I said, smiling through tears. "Being surrounded by people who don't love you is lonelier than being alone. At least now, when I'm by myself, I'm in good company." Everyone laughed softly, and we raised our glasses in quiet triumph. That night, as I sat in my garden under the stars, everything felt brighter. Maybe the sky hadn't changed, maybe I had. For the first time in decades, I was completely independent. No one relied on my money. No one owned my peace. And instead of fear, that freedom filled me with excitement. I could travel, renovate my home, buy what I loved, give to real causes, and invest in me. Freedom, I realized, didn't sound like silence anymore. It sounded like hope. A month later, I thought the battle was finally over. Life had settled into a calm rhythm. Morning coffee, gardening, lunch with Eleanor, afternoons spent painting. I had rediscovered the woman I used to be before I became everyone's lifeline. But one Thursday morning, while painting flowers at my easel, Mr. Weber arrived at my door, his face unusually grave. "Renata," he said quietly, "we need to talk. Max and Lena have filed a formal lawsuit in family court. They're asking the judge to declare you mentally incompetent and appoint a guardian to control your finances." The words hit me like ice. I knew they might stoop this low one day, but hearing it confirmed made my heart stop cold. If the judge decided I couldn't handle my own affairs, Max could be appointed as my legal guardian, meaning he'd control everything I owned. The thought made my chest tighten. I sank into my sofa, feeling the weight of the cruelest betrayal a mother could ever face. My own son was trying to have me declared mentally unfit, just so he could steal my money. "Mr. Weber," I asked, my voice trembling, "what proof could they possibly have? You've seen me. You know I'm perfectly fine." He sighed, shuffling his papers. "They've gathered statements from 3 witnesses claiming you've behaved irrationally. And they've submitted fake evidence, unpaid medical bills, and claims that you've been hoarding medication." I shook my head in disbelief. "That's a lie. I pay every bill on time. I don't even have any real prescriptions." "I know, Renata," he said softly, "but the documents look convincing. They even included a statement from Dr. Lehman saying you refused a psychiatric evaluation, which they're using as proof of mental decline." The manipulation was vicious. They twisted my refusal to undergo an unnecessary exam into a sign of insanity. They used my instinct to protect myself as evidence that I needed protection. "Who are these witnesses?" I demanded. Mr. Weber checked his folder. "Lena, naturally. A neighbor named Mr. Davis, and your pharmacist, Mr. Green." I blinked in shock. "Mr. Green? My pharmacist? What would he have against me?" "I don't know," he admitted. Something was off. "We need to speak to him," I insisted. That afternoon, we went straight to the pharmacy. Mr. Green looked startled when he saw me walk in, nervous even. "Mrs. Richter," he said. "It's good to see you." "Is it?" I asked, forcing a small smile. "Because I heard you signed a statement claiming I act erratically with my medication." His face flushed red. "Oh dear Lord. I didn't mean any harm. Your daughter-in-law came by a few weeks ago, said she was worried about you. She asked about your prescriptions." "And what did you tell her?" I pressed. "I told her you only buy vitamins and aspirin, that you don't take any regular medicine. But she insisted that proved you weren't caring for yourself properly." Mr. Weber cut in. "Did you sign a document, Mr. Green?" She handed me a paper saying I was confirming that Mrs. Richter had irregular medication purchases. I thought it was for her insurance. I didn't know it was for a lawsuit. My stomach dropped. My own pharmacist had been deceived into signing something he didn't understand. Lena's cunning had no limits. Mr. Green, I said, I need you to write a statement explaining the truth, that I don't have any medication issues. Of course, he said quickly. I'm terribly sorry, Mrs. Richter. After leaving the pharmacy, Mr. Weber and I went to confront Mr. Davis, the neighbor across the street. He opened the door with an annoyed frown. What do you want? He barked. Mr. Weber stepped forward. I understand you signed a statement about my client's behavior. Sure did, he said smugly. That woman's gone crazy. Installing cameras everywhere, having random people visit, yelling at her family in the street. I took a deep breath. Those cameras were for protection, Mr. Davis. Those random people were my friends. And the yelling? That was me defending myself against my son and daughter-in-law who broke into my home. He scoffed. That's exactly what a crazy person would say. There was no reasoning with him. His version of events was twisted by malice and gossip. That night, Mr. Weber and I sat down again. Renata, he said, we need our own psychiatric evaluation from someone credible. I know a Dr. Moore. She's fair and thorough. I hesitated. What if Max and Lena bribed the judge? What if none of this matters? He smiled gently. The system isn't perfect, but it's not rotten either. We'll fight this with evidence and truth. The next morning I met Dr. Moore. She was a calm woman in her 50s with warm, perceptive eyes. Mrs. Richter, she said kindly, I'll be asking you a few questions to evaluate your mental clarity. Take your time. For 2 hours she tested me: memory, logic, reasoning, emotional balance. When she finished, she smiled. Your results are exceptional for your age. You're not only mentally sound, you're sharper than most people half your age. Then why would my family do this to me? I asked quietly. She sighed. It's a common kind of elder exploitation. When greed takes over, love disappears. Her words stung, but they were true. That afternoon, Eleanor gathered our garden club friends. When I told them about the lawsuit, everyone was outraged. Renata, Maria said firmly, we'll testify for you. We've seen you every day. You're as sharp as ever. Cynthia added, you're stronger and clearer than most 40-year-olds I know. And Alfreda, our eldest member, squeezed my hands. My dear, what they're doing isn't new. Greedy children have been declaring their parents insane for generations. But you have something many victims didn't: proof, support, and loyal friends. Her words gave me strength. I wasn't alone. But deep inside I mourned. Max and Lena have destroyed any chance of reconciliation, I whispered. Even if I forgave them, nothing could fix this. Maybe that's for the best, Cynthia said softly. At least now you know who they really are. That night I cried, not out of weakness but release. I mourned the illusion of the son I thought I had. Yet beneath the grief a fire began to burn. I would fight, not just for my money but for my dignity and freedom. 3 weeks later came the trial. I dressed in my best black suit, looked at myself in the mirror and whispered, "You're stronger than they think." At 7 a.m. Mr. Weber arrived. "Remember, Renata," he said, "they have to prove you're incompetent. We just have to show the truth." By 9 we were in the courthouse. Max stood there in a polished suit. Lena wore black, as if mourning the death of our family bond. When our eyes met, she stared at me with icy disdain. Their lawyer was confident, experienced, a man who'd probably won dozens of similar cases. His opening words painted me as a delusional old woman, manipulated by outsiders. "Your Honor," he said solemnly, "Mrs. Richter has shown clear signs of mental decline. She's become paranoid, isolated, and financially irresponsible." Each word felt like poison. They twisted my independence into instability, my strength into madness. Lena was the first witness. She cried on command. "Your Honor, Renata has always been like a second mother to me. Seeing her like this is heartbreaking." Fake tears, real lies. When Mr. Weber questioned her, the cracks showed. "Mrs. Schuster, when was the last time you spoke to my client without asking for money?" Lena hesitated. "We always talked." "A specific date?" I don't remember." "And is it true you got married without inviting her?" "It was a small ceremony." "Didn't you tell her only special people were invited?" Lena's face flushed. "That's out of context." And what's the right context to call your mother-in-law not special? She went silent. Then came Max. Watching him swear to tell the truth broke me. My boy, the child I raised alone, now lying about my sanity. She's been irrational lately, he said. We think she's being manipulated. When Mr. Weber questioned him, the mask slipped. How much money have you received from your mother in the last 3 years? I'm not sure. Would $33,400 sound correct? He shifted uncomfortably. And how many times have you visited her without asking for money? Silence. Did you and your wife break into her home? We were worried. Did you pressure her to sign a power of attorney? It was to help her. At 35 years old, you still need your 71-year-old mother's help paying rent? Max had no answer. Their witnesses fell apart one by one. Mr. Davis admitted he'd never actually spoken to me. Dr. Lehman's opinion was destroyed by Dr. Moore's verified report proving my sharp mental state. Then came our turn. Mr. Green explained how he'd been misled. Dr. Moore presented her cognitive test results, proving my clarity. Eleanor and my friends testified about my independence and awareness. Finally, I took the stand. I stood tall, 71 years of strength in my spine. Mrs. Richter, Mr. Weber asked gently, why did you stop supporting your son and daughter-in-law? Because I realized what they gave me wasn't love, I said firmly. It was a transaction. My money was wanted, I wasn't. Do you regret that choice? I only regret that it took me this long to see the truth. Their lawyer tried to make me stumble, but I stayed calm. I answered every question clearly. For once, my voice carried both pain and power. When Mr. Weber delivered his closing statement, it was devastating. Your Honor, this is not the story of a confused old woman. This is the story of a woman reclaiming her life after years of emotional and financial abuse. What the plaintiffs want isn't protection, it's control. The courtroom fell silent. Judge Miller left to deliberate. 2 hours felt like 2 years. When he returned, my heart pounded. After reviewing all evidence, he began, it is clear Mrs. Richter is fully competent. Her financial choices are sound. This lawsuit, however, appears to be motivated by greed, not concern. The court denies the request for guardianship. Tears filled my eyes. I had won not just the case but my freedom. Outside, Max and Lena stood with their lawyer arguing. Lena glared at me with hatred. Max looked at me one last time, guilt flickering in his eyes, but it was too late. That night, Eleanor hosted a celebration. My friends raised their glasses. Renata, Elfreda said, you didn't just win a trial, you won your life back. She was right. For the first time in years, I was free. Months later, I sold my house, moved into a bright apartment downtown, and donated half my savings to organizations protecting elders from family abuse. The rest I used to live, to travel, to paint, to truly breathe again. I never heard from Max or Lena after that. Word was they'd moved to a smaller place, Lena finally working for the first time. Maybe hardship would teach them what my generosity couldn't, the value of honest living. Sometimes, under the glow of the city lights, I think about the woman I used to be, scared, manipulated, desperate to buy love. That woman is gone. In her place stands someone reborn, someone who finally understands. Love has no price and freedom is never too costly. My name is Renata. I'm 72 years old, and I've finally learned that the most important person I must protect is myself. If you felt my story, give it a like, share your thoughts below, and subscribe for more stories like this. Until next time, with love, Renata.